Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Don't let your memes be dreams. But in all honesty, these Screaming Skulls going to be doing some good work against these Skaven forces. We have Tomb Kings that are going to be led by myself, and the Skaven will be led by Pugnabon. So for my forces that I have brought for the Tomb Kings, we do have triple Screaming Skull catapults. Now, each of these Screaming Skull catapults has this nice little ability that is called Take Cover, which gives an additional -8 leadership to those units it hits, and especially against Skaven with a very low leadership faction, that -8 can be all it takes for just a couple of volleys to be routing off artillery crews or anything else. The rest of the forces, we do have Arkin the Black going to be leading the way up on his flying chariot. He is going to be bringing Spirit Leech, Doom and Darkness, Libra Mortis, the Staff of Nagash, and the Tomb Blade of Arkin. And he will be protected by some Tomb Scorpions as well. But for his kit, that Doom and Darkness in combination with the Screaming Skull catapults can provide a really hefty debuff to enemy leadership. So if we take a quick little look, it is going to be a -16. So when you add those together, that's -24 leadership. And we're just going to take a little look over here. The leadership, that has 51. That's with a little bit of a buff right there with the surrounding units. But it's like -24 is pretty considerable, especially considering Overcast is in an AoE. For the rest of the forces, though, we have some Nehekran horsemen going to be protecting that back line against any of the fast movers that the Skaven now have access to. For the front line, we are going to have some skeleton warriors mixed in with the Nehekra warriors. Nehekra warriors should mow through any of the Skaven troops quite quickly. We also do have some tomb guards to anchor that front line, and we have the King Nekesh's Scorpion Legion, the ROR Skeleton Spearman unit, which does have poison, and they look pretty damn good on top of that. And that is pretty much going to wrap things up. In addition to just a front line of some Skeleton Horse Archers, we have a trio of those. Going to be looking to skirmish things down, pretty cheap stuff, and having some fast movers to chase things off as they do route. Going to be quite nice indeed. Now, for the Skaven, we do have a pair of Warp Lightning Cannons going to be having their eyes focused on those Screaming Skull catapults, but we also do have a pair of Poison Wind Mortars. Now, these Poison Wind Mortars are a fantastic unit regardless of whatever matchup you're pretty much going to be in, because they do have the Poison Wind, which does damage over time for 10 seconds after it does hit a unit, so only one of its little shots needs to hit something, and it's going to be doing some good work there. We do have a Brood Horror as well, 95 speed, it has poison, armor piercing. What more could you want from a monstrous beast? But for the Lord, we do have a Grey Seer of Plague. Now, the Grey Seer of Plague, take a little look at the kit's going to be bringing the dreaded 13th spell. So that summons a unit of Storm Vermin Halberds, and it does provide a nice little AoE explosion when they are cast on top of things. Also have Vermintide for some Clan Rat summons, but the beast is here, as we do have Gorich, the Marauder Berserker, given over to Hellpit, and that is what he has become. And he will be supported, though, by some Rat Ogres as well. A trio of those. Frontline's going to be some Skaven Slaves, kind of standard stuff for the Skaven. We also do have some Clan Rats, and we have pretty much just Clan Rats and some Clan Rat Spears in the back. Heavy hitters, though, going to be the range units, the Brood Horror, and the Rat Ogre is going to be the main units for the Skaven. So let's get things moving a little quicker here, as both armies are going to start exchanging fire, as the Screaming Skull catapults are now in range and are going to be firing in on these Warp Lightning Cannons. And the shots are going to start landing and doing some very good work here, as we'll be able to just kind of see this leadership drop bit by bit with the shots that they do come down on. Now, the shots from the Warp Lightning Cannons going to be singing and finding their marks there, doing some damage to the crew, but overall missing the units themselves. And you can just see how low this leadership has already gotten off of just a couple of volleys from those Screaming Skulls. So it's going to be no time at all before those crews do end up routing, but the Poison Wind Mortars are going to start firing in, and initially thinking that I could just kind of sit back and relax, but with those Poison Winds really just making quick work of these Nehekran warriors, which are very good targets for them, because these units are massive damage dealers and a big threat at getting into that Skaven back line. So having both of those mortars fire in are quickly taking down that HP, not dropping a whole lot of models, but it is doing a ton of HP damage. And you can see already shattering these Warp Warp Lightning cannon crews, and now all 3 of those Screaming Skulls going to be targeting these other Warp Lightning cannons, and they haven't even taken out a single model, but their job here is to rout the crews, stop them from firing, and then let the fast movers clean up the rest. Now here is that dreaded 13th spell, doing a lot of damage to that Tomb Guard, and a ton of damage at that. The Libra Mortis does go down just as the Tomb Scorpion gets in, and that front line of Skaven slaves is just buckling very, very quickly under the undead, as those Tomb Scorpions do come in with their fear and terror, and the shots raining in from those Screaming Skull Cavalry still continuing to go, as they will now be routing off this other unit of Warp Lightning cannons. So both of those units are going to be off the line, but more Clan Rats going to be summoned by that Grey Seer. And the Tomb Scorpion's going to be targeting this Brood Horror, has now gotten himself into a little bit of a pickle between these 2 constructs. But otherwise, the front line, we do have the Rat Ogres coming in to assist against those Nehekran Warriors. And things are looking pretty good for actually kind of both sides right now, as the Poison Wind Mortars are still firing away, but however, these Warp Lightning Cannons quickly taken offline by those Screaming Skull Catapults. Now, the front line has gotten pretty diminished by those Poison Wind Mortars, but now that the Poison Wind Mortars are taking fire from the Screaming Skull, they are being routed off, and the Skirmishers are being able to fire in as well, and that balance of power ever so creeping towards the Tomb King's favor here at this point, as those Screaming Skulls are continuing to find their mark, and the Skaven really need to try and do something about that. Now, they are committing pretty heavily, though, to this front engagement here, as the Brood Horror with the Rat Ogres and that Grey Seer all engaging with these 2 Tomb Scorpions. But those Tomb Scorpions are doing quite well, and here is that circle of that Ushabti summon going to be coming down right behind this Brood Horror. It does have a little bit of a wind-up time, but here is going to be coming, trying to lock in that Brood Horror, and in they come, as well as a Spirit Leech going to be going the way of that Brood Horror, trying to really shut things down from him and keep that fast mobility off the table for the Skaven. From that sound there, it does sound like we have a overcasted Doom and Darkness coming around here, as here is right here, as it is actually just the remnants of that Doom and Darkness, as those Poison Wind Mortars were initially routed off. One of them has returned, though, and should be returning, as Fire still has 5 models left. Plenty of units to do quite a bit of damage, but now that these Nehekran Horsemen have seen that, they will be turning their attention now to that Poison Wind Mortar, who has racked up about 35 kills, but has done a fair amount of damage. Now, the Brood Horror has been pushed off the field by these Tomb Scorpions, and that Grey Seer of Plague is also in a bit of a predicament. Goritz trying to do all he can, but he is an anti-infantry character, more so than an anti-large. He does have nice armor-piercing values, but those Tomb Scorpions are not going to be any easier for him to really deal with. We do have some of the Nehekran horsemen are going to be crumbling away as their HP diminishes bit by bit, and they will be looking to kind of try and chase off these Poison Wind Mortars, as we have another Doom and Darkness being cast down in this backline just as those Poison Wind Mortars come back online, causing them to rout and making them easy pickings for those Nehekran horsemen to really kind of clean things up, as Ark in the Black being chased by these Rat Ogres, and Gorich here is going to be kind of running for his life at this point. He does get a nice summons down. That's really going to muck up the Brood Horror chasing him, and kind of give him a little bit of breathing room as he does try and regroup a little bit with these Nehekran horsemen here, and the Skaven will kind of turn their attention elsewhere, as those Screaming Skulls just continuing to fire in all game. However, we do have the Rat Ogres finally getting on top of them and shutting them down, at least for the time being. But the Skeleton Horse Archers going to see if they have something to say about that. Will be coming into the area, as they have been able to chase off this Grey Seer of Plague, as he is now shattered. And things are definitely looking good now for the Tomb Kings. They have the mobility advantage, as pretty much all of the fast movers are pretty low. I mean, we do have the Brood Horror with his 95 speed, but he is getting very low, and he doesn't really have that kind of great armor. He only has 40, so the shots from those Skeleton Horse Archers going to be doing some good damage. And both of these Tomb Scorpions, there's not a whole lot left for the Skaven that can really deal with both of these, as, I mean, Gorich does have armor-piercing values, but he is only one person, and those Rat Ogres aren't really going to be quite up for the task. They do have armor-piercing values themselves, but they are getting kind of low, and there is plenty of infantry support for the Tomb Kings here, as the Libra Mortis does go down on this engagement, as all of these units are getting terrified right off the field. And it does look like we have an overcasted Doom and Darkness, and that might just seal things, as it is going to rout off these rat ogres with that little bit extra of a push. The Brood Horror has shattered, and these Necron Horsemen going to be here to clean things up, going to be chasing down those rat ogres, and now both of the Tomb Scorpions going to be engaging with Gorich on their own. They will have some spear support as well as the King Nikesh's Scorpion Legion, so that is going to be going poison damage the way of Gorich. So Gorich not going to be in a good spot right now, as he still has that Doom and Darkness being cast on him, and he is going to be getting whittled down bit by bit by these two constructs, and things are looking mighty grim for the Skaven as balance of power continues to shift against them in this late game. Not a whole lot left for them to return to the table, as pretty much everything is being pushed off by the fast movers of the Tomb Kings, and that is going to be our match. So taking a look at the after battle report, Screaming Skull Catapults doing quite well indeed. 1,000 for them, so 1,000, 1,100 on another, and only 400 on that third one, but still quite a lot of value from those targets, and they pretty much routed off these Warp Lightning Cannons, making them a non-factor in this match. That leadership debuff really helping out in that regards. Tomb Scorpions as well, doing quite well overall. The combination of the two of them pretty much paid for themselves, and having that fear and terror really does help against the Skaven. Otherwise, Skeleton Horse Archers doing quite well with that mobility. Tomb Guard got nuked by that dreaded 13th earlier on, and Archon was just kind of there casting like only a Spirit Leaf, but mostly it was those Doom and Darknesses at some very key times, keeping those important units off, and for the first time you see the Poison Wind Mortars getting less than 1,000 in damage. Normally only a few volleys of those will quickly earn their money back, but this time they were shut down fairly quickly. Definitely one of the reasons why the Tomb Kings were able to pull through in this. Maybe just not quite enough substantial units to protect their expensive Poison Wind Mortars and Warp Lightning Cannons. The Rat Ogres did do quite well, but in the end it just wasn't enough. Even Gorich himself only getting a measly 371, despite him being an armor-piercing monster. It just wasn't quite enough to deal with the Tomb Kings. Well, that is all I am going to have for you today. I do hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good one.